All right, artists. So now that we know all about texture, we're going to create some for this week's art project, which is actually a two-parter. So this is part one, where we are going to create our textured paper. So we are going to be taking a smooth sheet of paper. If I feel it, it's very smooth and there is obviously no color on it, to this, where I wish you guys could feel this, but it is rough, crinkly, and bumpy and has a lot of texture to it and, of course, a lot of color. So it is going to be a blast. So, friends, what I want you to do first is get a workspace that is protected, okay? I'm putting a towel down for mine. You might want to put a pan, something, maybe some newspaper, something that is going to protect your workspace, because this is going to get a little messy. We want to still be careful while we're doing it, but it also will definitely probably get a little bit on your hands, so just make sure that you've got some a good place to wash your hands when you're done. Okay, so we first are going to start with, and I'm going to show you a few different ways you can go about this, depending on what supplies you have. So you're going to take a plain piece of paper, and this is a really fun part. You're going to sprinkle it into a ball. Okay, this is what is going to give our smooth paper its texture. Okay, so once you have it into a ball, you are going to take your, well, the first method I will show you guys is using watercolor paint. Okay, so I've got some water here, I've got my paints here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wake up the colors here, and I'm just going to start, you see me waking them up by putting some water in each container here. Just be careful, friends, because you know those lighter colors, yellow and orange, you want to really be careful. You saw Miss Einerson, right from the purple she went into the orange. Yikes, that is a no-no, and I did not clean my brush. So you want to make sure that you always clean when you switch between colors. Okay, so I'm going to take my crumpled up piece of paper here, and I'm just going to start putting on some color on the outside. This is super fun. Okay, so I can switch colors. I can kind of, if I want to, I can kind of get in the cracks there if I want. But this first round, I'm just gonna kind of try to get the whole outside covered, okay? And of course, my fingers are gonna start to touch the wet paint, so just be careful. I am switching now from purple to blue. Now, what I like to say is blue and purple are beside each other. They are neighbors in this paint palette, so they're going to get along really well if I happen to bump into another one. If I was to say to go from, say, blue to orange, well, I hate to break it to you guys, but that's going to, they're not going to mix as well or get along as well. And so you might start to see some brown. So if you don't want brown, then I would make sure that you really choose colors that are next to each other, okay? Green's going to play well. Green's going to play well next to the blue and purple because they are all what I like to call the cool colors, right? Okay, so now that I have the outside pretty much covered in paint, I'm going to put my paint aside carefully. I don't want to rip it, but I am going to unravel my paper here and kind of press it down gently. And as you can see, there is a bunch here that when I unraveled, that doesn't have paint on it yet. So you are going to need to repeat this process of crinkling it back up into a ball to try and get all of these, to cover all of the white space. So I had to do, when I was doing this one, I had to do it for about 3 times until I got it pretty well covered, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and finish this one really fast, and then we will talk about some other ways. All right, friends, so as you can see, I did about 3 rounds of this blue and green and purple one. I still have some white spots, you know, some areas that are a little bit whiter. So when you uncrinkle it, if you just want to get some paint on those areas that are pretty white, you can totally do that if you want more color on them. But friends, as you saw, I know it was kind of sped up, but as you saw, once I saw the white areas as I was unfolding it, when I crinkled it back up, I kind of crinkled it back up into a ball in a way where I could have those white areas on the outside so I could get those with the paint. Okay, so now that I have this all painted, I am going to set it aside. It's obviously very wet and damp right now, so we are going to let it dry for part 2 next week, okay? So now let's talk about, if you don't have paint here, what you're gonna do with your other supplies. And yes, this is going to happen. Don't worry, just wash your hands, okay? It is washable if you're using washable watercolor paint. Okay, so a couple different ways you can go about this, friends, is same thing. You could crinkle it up. And if you have those washable markers that I have talked about in different videos, you can do this same kind of trick by coloring the outside, okay, of your crinkled ball here. A little bit harder to get in the cracks, but you can color it, and then remember what happens when we add our water, it turns into paint, okay? So you can go about it, do it that way. This way might be, you might be able to do it in about three times. But see, that works just the same, okay? So you can use different colors of washable markers for that. And then of course, if you don't have the markers or the paint, and let's say you have crayons, okay? So one way we could do this with crayons is we could take our paper, crinkle it up, give it some texture, right? Because this is the part that really gets our paper kind of rough, crinkly, and bumpy. And uncrinkle it, okay? Ooh, look at all of that nice texture. There we go. Take your crayons, whatever colors you want, and rub them across your paper here where your texture is. Okay, so I'm gonna do some yellow and blue. Now, as you can see, I peeled back the crayon just a little bit because when I rub the crayon, or oil pastel would work too, across the paper, I'm not holding it like I'm coloring with it. I'm holding it down on its side like it's asleep. Go to sleep, crayon. And then I'm rubbing it across my textured paper here, okay? So that will get your paper nice and colored too by rubbing crayon across it, okay? So when you have your textured paper all done, set it aside. You can do 2, you can do as many as you want. They're pretty fun. And set them aside for next week. Can't wait to see the colors you guys choose. Have so much fun.